Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. This is your host, Andy Curry. Welcome to the show today, folks. Listen, I've got an interesting guest for you today, Richard Weylman, who has been speaking professionally for 28 years. The content Richard speaks on is marketing and branding, and elevating the customer experience and the client experience, and acquisition of new accounts. Richard speaks in the U.S. and internationally. He is based out of Florida. He has written lots and lots of books, folks. He has 2 bestsellers, and he has also written 124 textbook workbooks. And Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. It's great to be with you today.
Great to have you here. That's quite a list of accolades, Richard. And the first thing I want to ask you is about your speaking business. Who are you speaking to, and what are you teaching them?
Well, that's from a standpoint of what the topic area is. I only do custom presentations around the areas you just mentioned: marketing, branding, bringing in new accounts, client acquisition, and obviously elevating, if you will, the client or the guest or the customer experience. So when I speak around those topics, we're a research-based consulting firm first. So we do an awful lot of data gather to really find out what's happening in, shall we say, the consumer space. Regardless of where I'm speaking in the world, we do deep research to really get a sense of context so my content aligns with the individual. In addition to that, of course, what I do when I'm speaking in the U.S. Or anywhere else in the world, we do a meeting, discussion, discovery with whoever the decision maker is to make sure that what they're trying to solve is the strategies and tactics that I'm going to deliver. So that's why I only do custom presentations. Now, as far as the audience is concerned, in the end, my experience and my view of speaking is it's not really about me or anybody else as the speaker. What it's really about is that audience and how can you deliver content to help them move ahead. Now, I've had the privilege over these many years to speak to a lot of different industries. We do a great deal of work in some of the sports communities. We do a great deal, I do a lot of speaking in the financial services world, in the nonprofit world. Yesterday, I was with a major university the development team, about 150 people that are raising $3 billion from their alumni, and we spoke to them for about an hour and a half on the specific strategies to be able to first market this $3 billion fundraising effectively, and most importantly, how to really connect with their alumni in their case so that these individuals will not only be contributors the first time, what will be, in many cases, lifelong contributors to whatever project that, in this case, this university wants to achieve or brings forward to the table. So I speak a lot in the shall we say, the financial world, the nonprofit world, and as I mentioned, in the sports world as well. Also, I'm on the U.S. Luxury Board, so we do a lot of work in that space with the luxury brands to really help them develop a culture of an elevated service. And of course, we work with some of the more broadly known consumer organizations as well, who are trying to elevate the customer experience in their stores or in their dealerships, as the case might be.
Okay. So you bet. Now, as far as the marketing and branding, let's say you're getting ready to give a speech on that. What kind of things would you be teaching them? Well,
obviously it depends on the audience, but the most important thing is this massive shift we've seen in consumer behavior since 2008. When you go back before 2008, frankly, the sellers had all the power. And particularly as you rewind back into when we first turned into the century, the reality was that salespeople could show up to a presentation, talk about their attributes, their features, and maybe their generic benefits. And people would say, oh, okay, well, then I'll move forward because, I have a connection or I understand what they're presenting. But today, because of the internet, because information is ubiquitous, The reality is that today the consumer has all the power. So that has required a complete reset of how we brand, how we market, frankly, even how we sell. Consumers today are not interested in unique selling propositions. So when I speak, oftentimes a firm will say, well, here's our unique selling proposition, or even our unique value proposition. The challenge is today, people know the difference between a proposition and a promise. So what I would specifically speak often to groups about is how do you really deliver a promise of outcome? And if you look in my latest book, The Power of Why, Breaking Down the Competitive Marketplace, that particular book, I've interviewed 55 CEOs that had double-digit growth in their firms through the recession years. And then the question you have to ask yourself, well, how did they get that kind of growth? It's because they recognize this shift, and they speak specifically to bringing forward a promise of outcome that creates curiosity in the consumer. And so what consumers want today, they know they got options. If you're going to market and brand to people today, you've got to create curiosity versus trying to convince them to buy something. Because let's tell the truth, Andy, if people want to buy something, they're just going to go online and buy it. What you have to do in your branding and your marketing is create curiosity to generate an inquiry.
Very interesting. What kind of markets, these people the companies that had the double-digit increases in the bad economic times, was that really diverse, or were they very similar, or how did that pan out?
Yeah, extraordinarily diverse, from logistics companies. What I mean by the logistics, air freight, transportation trucking companies, to companies in the furniture business, which I heard people were putting their furniture on the curb. And during the recession, as they were getting evicted from their homes. Yet this company's had double-digit growth, several of them in that space. Other spaces where we've seen tremendous growth is in some of the clothing retailers that reposition themselves in the market. So it's been a very diverse population of organizations across many different types of enterprises. And that continues today. I mean, we see it with Walmart. As you know, Walmart just rebranded themselves. For years, it used to be Walmart, low prices every day. It was all about Walmart, trying to convince you to go there. And recently, they've come now out with their new brand promise, which is save money, live better. Well, that's a whole lot better than low prices every day. Save money, live better. And what it does, it stimulates people to realize there's a functional and emotional component to that brand. And it's been extraordinarily successful for them.
Fascinating. Were there any companies that really surprised you that had double-digit increases?
Well, certainly in the furniture industry, or let's just call it home furnishing, because it's a pretty broad swath there. That was a bit of a shock, only because we've been tracking the economy. We saw in 2007 that things were getting pretty tenuous in some of these sectors.
Right.
Primarily because I was asked to, nobody calls my office and said, we're looking for a speaker. They call because they're trying to solve a problem around marketing or branding, or they want to have a sense of what's the research, what does it look like in the future relevant to our product line, et cetera. So in 2007, we were getting calls in, and people were starting to get concerned. Traffic was down a little bit. They were shrinking markets, margins. They felt like the market was shrinking. What did that really, mean for the future? So there was some real shocks. I mean, I would really say in the consumer goods side of the house, certainly in home furnishings, that was a bit of a shock in terms of how quickly some firms really, if you will, got in front of it and got themselves positioned. And also you had a couple of financial firms that caught it. Now, they got caught in what happened on Wall Street, but even in their case, they didn't suffer at the hands of, shall we say, the withdrawal of the market, because they had positioned themselves. So they were able to stabilize and not take as big a hit as some of these firms in the financial services world as it did as a result of not only consumer angst, but the fact that, the stock market tanked and other things occurred. So, yeah, there were some real surprises for us.
Okay, so when the companies call you, they're looking for trying to put their finger on the market to see what's going on, and that's the research you provide them. Is that correct?
Yeah, or they've done some research and they say, okay, we've identified now our customer counts are down, or we realize our sales force, market opportunities out there, but we're really not getting a lot of velocity. We realize our closing ratio hasn't improved. We're in a race to the bottom on pricing. We get a lot of those calls. How are we going to get out of the race to the bottom on pricing? Well, it's the way you convey value. So when people call, they call it because they want to know if they've either identified an issue through their own research or just through general perception, or they'll call and want me to come in and present ways that they can get themselves, let's say, back on track with their marketing, with their branding, with their sales closing ratios, or perhaps, we've got a sports organization right now, surveyed their season ticket holders. They're very satisfied, which is a risk because satisfied customers and clients and fans are loyalty neutral, and people who are in high places realize that. So they've now called us and said, Richard, would you come and speak on how to elevate the guest and the fan experience so we can turn them into delighted advocates? Because delighted advocates don't care what the season ticket costs, and whatever happens on the field happens. But a satisfied fan, if you will, is not only loyalty neutral. They can go to a baseball game, a football game, a soccer game, any other type of activity, and go to a hockey game. There's lots of options for people today, including not going to the stadium and spending $200 to go watch baseball.
Right.
So with their families. So that's just an example of a phone call that I just received from a sports organization to teach their entire staff and to speak to their senior leadership on how can we elevate the guest experience.
When you told them the difference between a satisfied customer and an advocate, did the light bulb go on when you said that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was. Their point was we've got very good satisfied scores. We're a little concerned, though, because we're not selling as many season tickets and the waiting list is essentially dried up. And yet people are pretty satisfied here, so we think we need to do a better job of marketing. And my response was, you can continue to market, but if people are not renewing their season tickets, and more importantly, if you're not building a waiting list, then the fact that you've got satisfied fans means nothing. What you have to do is turn them into delighted advocates. And it was the CEO, the general manager, went, got it. That's exactly what the problem is. We don't have a marketing problem. We have an experiential problem.
So how do you figure out to turn them into an advocate?
Well, we do a lot of things. And in this particular case, we obviously have a large body of material and research that we've done on how to really elevate that experience. And that is everywhere from how they're greeted when they come into the stadium, how they usher to their seats in this particular case. They've got a lot of technology in the stadium, yet you don't have an app that you can order your food. You don't have delivery. We surveyed sports fans. They'll pay up to $3 more per seat delivery. That's a great opportunity. What is your signage like in the stadium? If you've got families there, what is your crowd control? How do you really make it a safe environment for families? What is your alcohol limit, as an example? When you have, in this particular case, you've got the team in the field early, do you have an opportunity to reselect fans as they come in and have them come down the field and meet the players on a random basis so that everybody feels like they're winning a lottery that night? Mm-hmm. If it's pouring down rain and you give people ponchos to run back to the car if the game gets canceled, we can make a whole list here. But there are so many things. In one case, we worked with the university, and their VIP suites, they wanted to elevate the experience in those suites because they were raising the price by 40%. So we put elevator operators in every single elevator to run it. Not that people can't push the buttons, but someone to greet them. Good evening, good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming. We know you're going to enjoy the game. If you need anything, I'm right here for you. Put a white glove attendant to run the elevator. And people would get to know these individuals and they can, oh, Marge, how you doing? How's the family? I'm Mr. Wilson. Thank you for coming this evening. And what it did is it built people a sense of personalization and humanization within that environment.
That is fantastic. How does one know if you have a marketing problem or an advocate problem? Exactly.
Well, it always starts with some kind of assessment. And most companies Not all, unfortunately, but most companies do some kind of customer satisfaction scoring or getting a sense of how satisfied people are. And we have a matrix. We look at those scores and we look at what questions were asked to achieve that score. Were they questions that really probe people's experience, or are you simply trying to get them to say, yes, that was fun? In other words, are you giving the answer in the question, did you have a really good time at the game the other night? Yes. Okay. Well, that's not a question. That's just trying to get an affirmation that what you're doing is correct.
Right.
So we look at the questions, we look at the scoring, and we can tell from the questions and the subsequent scoring, okay, now we have advocacy here, or are we simply trying to get a good satisfaction score, hoping that we're reinforcing in our brain, oh, we're doing such a good job, people are thrilled. And then the other thing we do, we've got a situation right now with a group in the Middle East, a large financial institution we're working with. We actually are interviewing face-to-face, kneecap to kneecap, some of their biggest account holders. We've got everybody involved, the board members, the executive vice president, and we have a document to discover whether it's advocacy, satisfaction, and if they're advocates, why are they advocates? And as a result of that, we're going to end up rebranding this major institution across the Middle East. It's pretty clear they not only have a satisfaction issue, people are not getting an elevated experience. The bigger issue is they have a branding issue because they're perceived by their customers completely different than the way the board thinks that consumers perceive them.
Wow.
So it really gets down to face-to-face, kneecap to kneecap, having a conversation with individuals to really get a sense of where they are. So that makes, we did one for the insurance industry recently and had about, 2,800, 3,000 people in the audience, and all executives from various firms around the world. And just showed them some of the data points from 3,300 captured data points that we got by talking to people about why they bought insurance. And I think that for the most part, the audience was shocked that all the reasons they think people buy insurance were none of the reasons that the consumer said they bought it.
Really?
Yeah.
What's an example of one that really jumped out at you?
Well, as an example, companies would say, well, they bought from us because we have a wide range of products and services. Well, we interviewed individuals and we said, why did you buy from those people? Was it because we gave them the answer. Was it because they had a wide range of products and services? So no, we solved it for a yes or an objection. But what was interesting, in 3,300 data point gathers, 71% said no as an example to that answer. Said, no, that's not why I bought. I bought because what they've done is helped me safeguard my family's future. I don't care if they got a wide range of products and services. I want to know they can safeguard my future. We had others, we would ask the question, we know how important it is to work with an experienced insurance agent. And why is it that you work with an experienced insurance agent? And they would come back and say, well, the reason I work with an experienced insurance agent is I believe that he or she would give me the correct answers. Well, why is that important to you? Well, then I can focus on my life passions. Well, that's a whole lot different than telling people we've been in business 120 years.
Yeah, that's
I've been an advisor for 30. I mean, that's a yin and a yang right there. So when I put those answers up, and I spoke specifically about why consumers buy, this massive shift in consumer behavior. Well, in any case, it was extremely well received because people asked. I spoke yesterday in New York, and I had this large group, and this one fellow raised his hand and said, "Let me tell you what I think." And I said, "It's fine." I answered his question. I said, "But keep in mind, if you're going to market, if you're going to brand, if you're going to do anything in the marketplace today, it really doesn't matter what I think. It really doesn't even matter what you think. The only thing that matters is what that customer out there, in their case, what that customer out there in that stucco house, what do they think?"
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can start to think like they think, communicate from their point of view, position yourself in, shall we say, their perspective, that's going to break you away from the competition pretty quickly.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, Richard, how can people learn more about you, and if they want to see you speak or talk with you, how do they do that?
Very simply, they can go to Richard Weylman, 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 richardweylman.com. We have several sites, but they can go there. richardweylman.com, or they can call the 800 number if they're in the U.S., and that's 800, of course, 535-4332. 1-800-535-IDEA, if you're trying to just remember it as you're driving. And then if you're international, that number is 941-828-3600. But it's easy. If you look Richard, Weylman.com, all the contact info is there. You can even send an email for it. So thank you.
Okay, so Richard, thank you very much. That was fascinating for me. Marketing is stuff that I've loved for a long time, and that was a really killer insight for me to hear all that. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for the interview.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.